Imagine the silence of a mountain slope in Yemen 500 years ago. It is the middle of the night, a time when the world has surrendered to sleep. But inside a stone lodge, or zawiya, a circle of men is preparing to wage war against their own fatigue. The air is cool, thin, and carries the scent of burning charcoal. These are the mystics of the Shadhiliyya Sufi order, and they have gathered for the dhikr, the ceaseless remembrance of God's name. To chant, to sway, to breathe in unison for hours requires a stamina that the human body does not naturally possess. Tonight, however, they have a weapon. On the coals sits an earthen pot, bubbling with a dark, opaque liquid that releases a bitter, earthy steam. This is not food. It is not water. It is a new and secret technology of the soul. They pass the cup from hand to hand, drinking deeply. This is the birth of your morning ritual, but here, in the shadows of the 15th century, it is known as the wine of the believer. We often think of invention as a spark of engineering or science, but the discovery of coffee was fundamentally a theological breakthrough. The chronicles of the historian Abd al-Qadir al-Jaziri take us back to this precise moment. He writes of the Sufi saint Ali ibn Omar al-Shadhili, who, while traveling in Ethiopia, observed birds eating red berries and flying with unusual vitality. But unlike the legend of the dancing goats, the Sufi's interest was not in labor for energy, it was energy for worship. When he brought the berry back to Yemen, the Shadhili mystics boiled it, creating a brew they called qahwa. It is a word that drips with poetic irony. In classical Arabic, qahwa was a name for wine, a substance strictly forbidden in Islam because it clouds the mind. The Sufis, however, claimed this dark broth was the anti-wine. Where alcohol induced succor or drunkenness, this new drink induced yaqza, a state of hyper-wakefulness. This distinction is crucial to understanding the spiritual architecture of the first cup of coffee. For the mystic, sleep is a little death, a veil that falls between the lover and the beloved. To sleep is to forget. Therefore, to stay awake when the body screams for rest is an act of spiritual defiance. The caffeine coursing through their veins was interpreted as a divine aid, a physical manifestation of the desire to remain present with God. The bitterness of the drink itself was part of the ritual. It was not sweetened with milk or sugar. It was harsh, astringent, a reminder of the ascetic path that strips away the sweetness of the world to reveal the truth beneath. As the night deepens in the zawiya, the effects of the qahwa take hold. The recitation of the dhikr grows louder, the movements more rhythmic. The exhaustion that usually plagues the midnight vigil dissolves, replaced by a lucid, vibrating clarity. The Sufis believed this intoxication was not of the mind, but of the spirit. The body was energized solely so the soul could ascend. In this isolated mountain lodge, the relationship between chemistry and theology was forged. The bean was not yet a commodity, it was a sacrament, a key that unlocked the door to the invisible world, allowing the seeker to stand on the threshold of the divine long after the rest of humanity had closed its eyes. From the silence of the mountain sanctuary, we descend into the noise and dust of the city. It is 1511, and the secret of the Shadhili order has escaped. The dark brew has flowed down from the high peaks of Yemen and spilled into the streets of Mecca. It is no longer confined to the solemn circle of the dhikr. Now it is being poured in a new kind of establishment that has sprung up around the holy mosque, the qahwa, or coffee house. Here, the drink is not serving the silence of prayer, but the hum of conversation. Men gather not to chant, but to talk, to play chess, to debate news, and to watch the world go by. And to the authorities, this shift from the sacred to the social is terrifying. Enter Khair Beg, the governor of Mecca, a man of rigid order and deep suspicion. One night, while walking home from prayers, he spots a group of men huddled in a corner of the mosque courtyard, passing around a vessel of dark liquid. They look suspicious. They look, to his eyes, drunk. But when his guards seize the pot and the governor tastes the liquid, he is confused. It is not wine, it is bitter, hot, and strange. When interrogated, the men claim it is merely qahwa, the drink of the pious Sufis used to stay awake for prayer. But Khair Beg sees something else. He sees a substance that gathers people together in unregulated groups. He sees a stimulant that loosens tongues. In the eyes of the state, a gathered crowd is always a potential rebellion waiting to hatch. And so we witness one of the most fascinating legal dramas in history, the trial of coffee. Khair Beg convenes a council of jurists, doctors, and theologians to determine the fate of the bean. The court is packed. The air is thick with tension. The prosecution argues that coffee is physically harmful, bringing forth two Persian doctors who testify that the drink disrupts the body's equilibrium, drying out the humors and causing melancholia. But the real debate is theological. If qahwa alters the mind, does it count as an intoxicant? If it makes you high, is it haram, forbidden, just like wine? The defense is passionate. They argue that unlike wine, which clouds reason, coffee sharpens it. It is the fuel of the scholar, the companion of the student. But Khair Beg is relentless. He is not fighting a chemical, he is fighting a culture. He fears the coffee house more than the coffee. These new spaces are democratic, open to anyone with a few coins, places where rank and hierarchy dissolve in the steam of the pot. To a governor charged with maintaining order, this is sedition in a cup. The council eventually bows to his pressure. A fatwa is issued. Coffee is declared haram. Stalks of beans are burned in the streets of Mecca, and sellers are beaten. For a moment, it seems the history of the world will change, that coffee will remain a forbidden vice, extinguished before it can conquer the globe. But the ban misses one crucial detail. The Sultan in Cairo, the supreme ruler of the empire, is himself a drinker of the brew. When news of the prohibition reaches him, he is reportedly furious, not at the coffee, but at the provincial governor who dared to outlaw a drink enjoying royal favor. The fatwa is overturned. Khair Beg is reprimanded. The coffeehouses reopen, louder and busier than before. The attempt to cage the spirit of the bean within the strictures of orthodoxy has failed, and the path is now clear for the drink to spread north, to Istanbul, and eventually to the waiting west. The story of coffee is a story of migration, and in that migration, a profound transformation occurs. As the bean travels from the minarets of the Ottoman Empire to the church spires of Europe, the spirit is slowly distilled out of the drink. By the 17th century, the sacks of Yemeni and Ethiopian beans are arriving on the docks of Venice, London, and Amsterdam. The Europeans are initially suspicious of this black soot and syrup of soot, as some called it. Priests in Rome famously asked Pope Clement VIII to ban the Muslim drink, fearing it was an invention of Satan to entrap Christian souls. But like the Sufis before him, the Pope tasted it, found it delicious, and essentially baptized the bean, quipping that it would be a pity to let the infidels have exclusive use of it. Yet, as coffee conquers the West, its function shifts. In the cold, damp climate of Northern Europe, the wine of the believer becomes the fuel of the Enlightenment. In London, the coffee house explodes in popularity, but it is a very different beast from the Meccan cafekhane. These places come to be known as penny universities. For the price of a penny, the cost of a cup, one could enter, sit for hours, and listen to the greatest minds of the age discuss science, politics, and commerce. The silence of the Sufi dhikr is replaced by the roar of the trading floor. The London Stock Exchange literally begins in a coffee house, Jonathan's Coffee House, where lists of stock prices were posted on the walls. Notice the inversion of the ritual. The Sufis drank to transcend the world, the Europeans drank to master it. The Sufi sought to slow down time, to expand the moment of the night into an eternity of presence. The European capitalist drank to speed time up, to extend the working day, to banish the natural rhythms of sleep in favor of productivity. The caffeine was no longer a biochemical aid for prayer, it was a biochemical aid for labor. The clarity it provided was directed not toward the face of God, but toward the ledger and the contract. The wakefulness of the mystic became the alertness of the worker. Today, we stand at the end of this long process of secularization. We hold our paper cups as we rush to offices, using the dark brew to shock our systems into compliance with alarm clocks and meeting schedules. The ritual has become purely functional, a commodity to be consumed on the go. But perhaps, if we pause, we can taste the ghost of the past in the bottom of the cup. The bitterness is still there, the same chemical compound that Ali ibn Omar al-Shadhili brewed in that mountain lodge. We have likely lost the theology of caffeine, but the physiology remains. It is still a drink that commands us to wake up. The question this history asks of us is simple. Wake up for what? Are we awake merely to produce, to churn through the tasks of the day? Or can we reclaim a fraction of that original intent? Perhaps the next time you brew a cup, you might treat it not as fuel, but as a moment of pause. A secular echo of the midnight vigil, a brief, steaming reminder that to be awake is a gift, and that even in the rush of the modern world, there is a space for silence, for presence, and for the remembrance of things greater than ourselves.